Brad, you're the best. Since your mic is still hot, I'll start with our little intros here down the line. Melissa Reeves, Razor Consulting. Razor Consulting is a Fargo business. We were founded here by two former Microsoft employees who worked on the Microsoft campus here and really saw a need for some really smart but impactful changes in the consulting area. So they broke off from Microsoft, started Razor Consulting in 2011, 2013. Since then, we've grown to nearly 200 employees. We're operating in 13 states. We do professional services work, software development, business analytics, what we're going to talk about today. We also do federal contracting and all kinds of goodies. So lots and lots of nerds who are here to help your business from Razor Consulting, homegrown right here.
Andy Carr, I'm the lead nerd at Razor Consulting, senior business intelligence analyst. We've been doing business with local business for up to like about 5 years in the Power BI space. We've expanded it out to Power Automate and Power Apps, which we'll talk a little bit about today. And recently, like Brad said, he introduced us to FM Forklift and Lift Pro, and it's been a great partnership. And yeah, that's.
My name is Chris Overby. I'm an operations manager at FM Forklift. We're a Toyota forklift dealership. We have locations in Fargo, Bismarck, Billings, in Omaha, Nebraska, and then we have a sister company through common ownership, Lift Pro Equipment, and Brandy's my counterpart in the same role with that company. So if you want to introduce yourself quick.
Sure. My name is Brandy Johnson. Just like Chris said, counterpart to him, operations manager for Lift Pro. Same industry, forklifts. We actually cover the whole state of South Dakota, and we dip into the southwest part of Minnesota, northwest part of Iowa, and part of the southeast of Wyoming area as well.
Okay. Well, I'll start us off on the next slide there, but so basically, yeah, like Brad said, I've been a customer of Network Center since probably the early 2000s or mid 2000s, and we'd been using SSRS for all our SQL reporting off our ERP system. Do you guys know what SSRS is? So we set up automated reports to go out weekly, and we wanted to find out a better way to do that. We were putting reports in people's hands that they didn't have the time to do at that moment. So when they went to go look at that report later, it wasn't live data anymore, and they were researching and then getting frustrated because what they were trying to problem solve on had already been fixed. So that being said, we have a document management software company that we approached us to do some Power BI reporting, and I said, sure, yeah, I'd like to go down that road. They built us a couple reports or whatever, but I kept asking them, like, how do I roll this out to my whole organization? And they didn't really have any good answers for me, and they lost the person that we'd been dealing with, and they put in a new person. So I thought that was a perfect time. I reached out to Brad, and I go, hey, I need your help. I want to figure out how to roll this out to my company. So Brad actually contacted me back a little later. He's like, you know what? I don't think Network Center is the right solution for you here. I want you to meet with Razor and hear what they have to say. And that's kind of how we met these guys. So I thought, Andy, you could probably speak on that first visual on that PowerPoint there.
So we all have data, right? But who thinks their data looks like this? Just a bunch of strings going up into some ball, and you just don't even know how to approach it, don't know what strings to pull on, how to figure that out. And maybe you're in a spot where I'm not even sure we have strings, right? Like maybe there's data, maybe we don't. But the goal here is, well, we can take those strings, whether we help you standardize it or whatever it is, but we'll jump into where you're at, whether you're starting at the very beginning or if you're starting at a spot where FM and Lift Pro did, where they had some reporting already set up, and we can customize that to what you need. So the goal here is to get it from all of these strings that we're seeing here into some actionable insight, to get it the meaningful information to the correct audience, to where it can actually drive change and positively affect their day-to-day work.
So Brandy and I got together and we discussed kind of how we wanted what we wanted to do with Power BI, and we both kind of said, well, I think the service department's probably our biggest issue, and we want to give the right information to our service managers and supervisors. And we both knew that our ERP system, it works for accounting, but it's clunky. You have to get into different menus and modules inside of it to kind of dig around to figure out what you want. And then we have a document management software, like I said, that syncs up with our ERP system, and it helps push our work orders through automatically through our organization. And we also have a service software for tablets for our mechanics to perform their jobs with. And anyways, so we thought Power BI, this will be perfect. We can put all that in one spot. So this is one of the first things we came up with, was a work in process for our service managers. And like I said earlier, we're sending out these weekly reports, and yeah, it's great. We knew what was kind of work in process through that, but this was giving us like a live picture of exactly what was open at that time in a meaningful way. So yeah, and Brandon did discuss more too. We didn't want to jump into Power BI, and we decided not to go the normal route of doing the KPIs and all the buzzword type things. We wanted to make it for our supervisors and our managers to be able to do their job day to day and help our mechanics get their paperwork processed in time. So, Brandy, I don't know if you want to interject into this slide here.
Sure. So one of the things when Chris approached me about the pathway of where we're going to go with Power BI, to be honest with you, it was new to me. It was different information. So my question was, what is Power BI? How do we integrate this into our business system? And who's it going to benefit? Is it going to benefit just leadership, or will it also benefit our employees as well? And so, like Chris mentioned, we kind of looked at it from two different pillared standpoints. One of them is actionable items that are like a day-to-day. What can we put into the hands of our employees, of our managers, whether it's supervisors, team leads, whatever, and help them do their day-to-day operations. And then the second pillar was the KPI, your key performance indicators, and a lot of high-level reporting and stuff. So Chris and I visited. One of the key important factors that we said is we need the buy-in of the rest of our employees and our leadership to have the benefit of Power BI be able to be rolled out to our company and to see, the ROI on it and that. So what does that look like? So when we started out with creating data, we did this at a very detailed level. And what I mean by that is, just because you see in front of you is a reporting, it's just not a reporting. When we got Andy and Melissa Razor involved, Andy really opened our eyes to the fact that you can do much more than just report. You can drill down. You can drill down this data into even deeper information. So although I can see how many work orders we have open, what our total dollars we've got in that, but I can also see which employee had that work order open. I can drill down that work order even further to find out what is the details in that work order. How long has it been open? What are the specific dollars within it? How many parts or labors in it? And so forth. So the nice thing about Power BI, the functionality of it is so much more than just a visual. It's interactive. You can interact with it at different levels and at different capacities. It's very dynamic in that way. So that was very insightful for us when we were rolling this out to our employees to take a look at it, especially our managers. Having had that, a few things that really opened our eyes is seeing things at real-time data and not realizing the things that we were missing that were behind the scenes. So Chris mentioned about different platforms that we utilize. Power BI was able to combine all of that into one area for us so that we can take a visual look at, so I'm not having to go into our business system or into our document management system and pulling up all these documents. I can go right here and look at it. And it was very eye-opening to see some of the things that we were missing because maybe it was, you know, hidden underneath things that we didn't realize were sitting open for longer days than really should have. Maybe it was things that should have been closed, you know, months ago, but have been sitting out there open, but we don't, you know, what is it that's missing it? So it was insightful to see additional data besides what you're just getting here, but things that maybe we're missing that we don't see otherwise. One of the key points that I'd like to put out there is we started this back in June with Razor and that, and from June to today, we have improved our work order in process to 30 days or less. We've decreased it over 70% just by utilizing Power BI.
Brandy, how are the employees who are viewing this data in the office or out of the office, how are they viewing it? What specific medium or device are they seeing it on? So how are you displaying it to the people who are using the data?
Sure. So what we did is, once we determined some of the reporting tools that would be beneficial, we actually met with each of our teams to find out from them, hands-on, what is it that you need to do your job day to day? What information would be helpful for you so that you can go and perform, whether it's your, you know, your day-to-day at your desk, whether it's with your customers, whether it's with your employees and other areas and that. So we really were able to drill down with our employees on what data or information they needed. From there, we created reports and we put this out onto a desktop app for them to utilize that they can actually pull up on their computers, on their phones, on their tablets through Power BI app. So that is where all of our employees can go in and access this information at their fingertips to be able to do. The nice thing about that is before they were just receiving an email with an attachment every Monday on reporting that were available to them, but they weren't real time because by the time they got to that information, it was probably already Wednesday, Thursday. A lot of that data is already outdated. This, they can go in at any time during the day on their computers, phones, and that through Power BI app.
And like you mentioned earlier last night, but her service manager, when he goes on the road to go visit another branch, he'll just quick go to his computer, grab the most current data, or use his phone, and then bring that and show that to his technician in a different site and be like, no, this is still open, like why? And can have a good conversation, so.
One of the things, you know, we talked about our main line of the Toyota brand, and Toyota is really big into Kaizen or continuous improvements. And that's where we feel Power BI will always help us to continuously improve, whether it's, you know, at employee level, manager level, or even at leadership level, to be able to see the progress of how are things going, what are areas that we need to improve on. The reporting's been very, very big and very beneficial for everybody that's there at all different levels in our organization.
And that's something that's really neat to see with Chris and Brandy and a lot of our customers is that they get that momentum going to where they're like, they'll come to a meeting and you'll show them the update since last week and they're like, oh, cool. And then can we also do this? Can we also do this? And then that just keeps going. And it's a really cool thing to see from our side too, that they have great engagement with not just these two, but their employees as well. And that's what drives a lot of the requests and changes and you know, development that we see.
That's one thing I overlooked too, was when Brad introduced us to Razor, but we meet on a weekly cadence with them. So every Thursday morning we meet. Sometimes Brad sits in with us even too. So, but it just keeps things going and going with us. So we come with new things every week for Andy, and then he'll help develop something, and then we'll meet back again the next week, and we keep it going. So.
Yeah, and this next slide, great segue, guys, naturally, adding complexity to the initial reports that you guys had. Here's an example of that.
Yep. Yeah, so this is a report that came from Brandy's side here, but they wanted to see what customers' machines are due for PMs, and they wanted a good visual of what's due, like graphs by months.
Yeah, scheduled maintenance.
Scheduled maintenance, yep. I say PMs without thinking about it.
Yeah, I do too.
Periodic maintenance, yeah.
So this is accessible
Yes, it's accessible of any web browser through a Microsoft login.
So what security do you have in place to?
It's part of your Microsoft tenant, so you'd log in with your email address and your password. And then Network Center is actually helping us right now switch to MFA as well.
So it's accessible, but you have to have your login information to Microsoft 365 to gain access to it. So you can't just go out to a web browser. If you do go out to a web browser, it will prompt you to still log in as who you are to have it.
Yep.
To add in addition to your question about security level, that was one of the things that we challenged Andy with, and he couldn't have done it any better explaining that my concern is some employees don't need to have this access to this report, but they don't need to have access to certain things in this report. So like we have multiple locations. I don't need my supervisor worrying about or looking or wasting time looking at somebody else's location. I need them just to focus on their location and make sure they're doing theirs. So they can drill it down specific to users to specific data as well.
And that was one of my things with Brad for rolling it out when I approached him was I want to know how to roll this out to certain departments without other departments having access. So we started out with the service department. We've added the parts department. We've added sales department, accounting department. And Andy helped us roll that out to certain users by, you'd have to say the technical part, but it's
Yeah, it's an audience.
audience,
Yeah, you can
yeah.
create separate audiences within that app. So sales is looking at sales, service is looking at service, and so forth.
So Microsoft has access back to your core or wherever you have this data stored?
We have an on-prem SQL server that has a gateway. Is that what you call that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Gateway.
So I know enough to be dangerous. That's about it. So
Great question.
yep.
So speaking of data sources,
Yeah, so this is another one of the strings that we were looking at earlier. But, we touched on this just a bit, but like data comes from different sources. It comes from your ERP, it comes from your core system, and it might be sitting in an Excel file on a OneDrive or something like that. Power BI can access all of that and combine it together. So on the previous screen, where we're looking at the list of techs that are assigned to a specific machine to go service, they're not assigned to the machine, they're assigned to the area. So this is a list of all the zip codes in, I believe, South Dakota, Iowa, and so forth, where the techs are assigned. So we're combining the zip code from this list, the techs that are assigned here, and that's how that gets back to that prior screen to assign that tech to a specific spot.
Brandy wanted we wanted an easier way to basically assign, yeah, she did, assign like technicians and sales staff to certain cities, counties, customers. And we didn't feel that managing it in our ERP system was the best solution. So we decided to put it into an Excel spreadsheet format, and then Andy was able to sync that up into Power BI. So
Yeah, machines come and go, but zip codes, they're,
yeah.
fairly static at least. So. Yeah, go on. This is another look at what we were looking at a couple slides ago, but this is just another an example of how you can look at where the scheduled maintenance is for an upcoming month. So, divided by or separated out by color, but each branch can see where they need to go in this upcoming month. Again, this is part of what we go back to is getting the right information to the right audience. This might not mean something to everyone, but if it's someone who is working on work orders sees like, well, I know I need to go to Aberdeen next week, and what are some other maintenances that are in that area? This may be another way to say like, well, I don't know where zip code 58104 is, but I know, here's where Aberdeen is, and it looks like there's quite a few around there that I could maybe hit in that same trip. So it's, again, I think we mentioned this, but it's like just ways to drive efficiency in people's work, so they're maybe not making an extra trip or can free up some of their time during the day where they're not, diving through a bunch of Excel files trying to figure out something. So where we have that information available to you right when you log in.
and some of the visuals here, it takes the human element and makes it much easier. So if you look at a heat map, for example, it shows you something that you may have missed in 25 rows of an Excel sheet, right? If this was all just captured in list format, there's the opportunity for somebody to miss something or to make a mistake or have a misunderstanding or not be able to share workload, from one employee to another. This kind of removes that human element and makes it much more intuitive.
And I will say, to piggyback off of that, one of the biggest things is since our managers implemented and started using Power BI, he would actually physically print out that morning or a morning to meet with each of the employees to show them, this is how many work orders you got open, this is what's out there. Before, it was just a conversation, and it was more like, I'll get that, or no, it wasn't, or whatever. But to have visuals and actually put it in front of the staff, the ownership, the morale, all of that has changed, because now they're like, oh, like that's a true number. That's how many dollars are sitting out there. This is on me. This is good information. Now I understand where you're coming from or what this is. So it just even helps the morale and all that with the team and the employees, and having that conversation between, their direct supervisor and the employees as well.
I'll add one thing that kind of goes into the next slide here, but we didn't really discuss like the subscribing and the alerts that are built into Power BI. But when you're in the Power BI in the browser, you can go to subscribe, and you can set up yourself to get like automated emails if you want, and it'll do it off of the filter that you had set on your browser. And then alerts is kind of more into the Power Apps that you kind of helped us out with. But.
Yeah. So Power BI is great at a lot of things. Where it has gaps, that's where the rest of the Microsoft Power Platform can really fill in. What we're looking at here is it's an email. It's an email basically with the same information that we were looking at a couple slides ago. It's filtered down to the specific tech, to where they're just receiving an email with the upcoming maintenance that they have for that month. One thing that, like I said, Power BI is great, where it maybe struggles is like letting information outside of Power BI. You can export the whole thing if you want. You can filter down and export an Excel file, but like that requires going in there and doing that. What Power Automate does, it's a low or no code environment where it basically requires two things. It requires a trigger and an action. So the trigger here is the first of the month. So the first of the month, it'll go through the rest of the actions, which ends up in sending this email out. It's querying the Power BI report, filtering it for each individual tech, and then emailing it out to that tech. So it's maybe in an instance where, hey, not everyone needs, a Power BI license. This is a way to, I don't want to say like get around that, but just in addition, it's another feature to like get that information where it needs to be to the correct audience.
And if you think about file generation too, it's one of the big, drivers towards companies investing in this kind of functionality and getting it set up. Previously, if you guys were doing this manually, you would have had to have someone on the first of the month going in, making that query, creating all the documentation, and then sending out all of these emails and pestering the team about it. Whereas this, you set it up once, it happens reliably and regularly, and you can just move on.
And that's actually exactly what this stemmed from. We had somebody at the 25th of every month take 2 days and have to do this information that Andy and Razor have been able to do for us now, just on the back end, and saved us 2 days worth of work.
Yeah, and this has a lot. They've done a few other things with Power Automate as well. One is, I think, when you get invoices kicked back.
Yeah.
It was a daily report, and it was rare when actually it was once a month or a couple times a month when this would actually occur. But Chris would get the email every day and have to go in and look. And now we've got it automated to where it only sends an email to him and I think accounts payable or
Accounts receivable.
Accounts receivable.
Yeah.
We've reached the end of my accounting.
But we have auto emailing at night that sends out batch invoices to our customers, and it's just an alert to let us know that one of them failed to email. So.
Yeah.
Are you guys using Copilot with Power BI at all?
We are not. Brandy and I both have Copilot licenses, just that we kind of play around with, but we haven't gotten that far.
All right. Next, Power Apps is in the same family. It's in the Power Automate family, or Power App, Power Platform family. There we go. Not a power, but Power Apps. What it is another way that you can interact with the data. One thing that Power BI doesn't have built into it is that interaction where if you wanted to add a note or add, I shouldn't say interaction, but like send data back to the source. That's where it is not great. But Power Apps and how they're using it here is they get the list of accounts payable that they have out. Am I using that right, or receivable?
Accounts receivable.
Receivable. There we go. Again,
Accounting knowledge.
accounting. I will learn this. But what they wanted to do is create a note to say, like, I contacted this customer last week, and so they're not, maybe contacting the same customer. So what it does, the top row is a line from a Power BI above the arrow, and it has a link where the red box is to open up a box to say, I talked to this customer last week. And then when you save and close it, that will appear back in the Power BI report. There are add-ons within Power BI to do that, but they're very expensive, whereas Power Apps is a much more reasonable solution.
We've had Andy do this in 2 places, and that's, accounts receivable, and then also just with the open work orders too, but just allowing our users to be able to plug in a quick note so that it stays with that data for the life of it until it gets closed out. So that way we don't have to go back and try to figure out the same problem or what's wrong with it, and then figure out, oh yeah, that's what happened to it, okay. So we just wanted a way to not have to keep doing that over and over again.
Yeah. That might be about. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so before we really go into the thank you and Q&A, there's a couple of things I want to mention too, which is, I'm sure there's a mix of leaders in here and people who are guiding teams. And at the end of the day, when you're looking at considering something like Power BI, it's really what are we trying to get out of it and how do we pay for this? We've touched on that a little bit, but what we're trying to get out of it is, similar to the question about Copilot. With something like Power BI, it doesn't matter how your business is evolving or how you plan to evolve in the future. You can always get started now with the data set that you currently have, with the systems that you're currently utilizing. And then if you go through, let's say, a new ERP implementation in the future, Power BI can come along with you. You can, connect the functionality that you're already using into that new system and still maintain your systems, your reporting, any KPIs that you have, all of that good stuff that you've spent time building. It can grow along with you, and so it's a fantastic tool that will kind of follow your business, as you first get started, and then as you continue to grow or innovate in the future, which isn't really common for a lot of software products. So it's really unique in that way too.
Wrap?
Yeah.
More?
No, all good.
It's blinding. Anybody have any other questions?
Brad, I would maybe just say too, this isn't like a software service that breaks the bank either. He knows more than anyone that I'm not the type of guy that just throws money at software solutions. So it's just a license per user, and like she already said, it's a big ROI. I mean, we dropped our work in process down 70%. And
Brady, repeat the statistic again, will you please?
Sure. So June of this year to, I think it was October when we actually did the data run, might have the numbers here, but our work order in process for over 30 days, we were able to drop to under 30 days, over 70%. I mean, and that was huge.
Anybody need to rent, own, or lease a forklift?
All right.
I think from my perspective, it's always my privilege to work with local companies. And most of what we do at Network Center always feels transactional. It always feels like I'm reaching in Mark Tuma's pocket and pulling money out because he has to buy something, right? It feels real transactional. Anytime we can work with local horsepower to do great things right here in Fargo and have an ROI associated with it, to me, that's where the real value in technology lies. Right? I'd sell you a firewall and a computer. You need those things to function. You need to keep the lights on too. But anytime you can save, I heard you say also a report used to take 2 days. You now have an employee assigned because it automatically happens. That ROI is really, can I use the word exciting? Like, that's exciting. To me, if I'm a leader of an organization and I see that happening and you can lean on IT, not to just be the break fix guys or the computer rollout guys, but to have an impact, a substantial impact on your employees, change the way you think, work, and function. And Brandy brought it up as well. She made the point about their employees are engaged. They're accountable to a specific action quarterly, monthly, and semi-annually. And they feel like they're a part of the business at a higher level, if I can put words in your mouth, correct? So I'll wrap it with that. If anybody else has any questions, let's have at them. If not, okay, hold on a sec.
Okay. Just recently, we were asked the task to pull numbers because we are celebrating 25 years in 2025. And Tammy over there, she's our CFO, she was having the hardest time just because we don't have the data going back to the early 2000s, but how we kind of process that now is our Excel spreadsheets, and year after year, so we don't have a mass spreadsheet. So properties that were sold in 2024, who were the buyers, how much it went for. Is there, just because you do the migration into the program, then you would just utilize that moving forward, and then all of that, you could filter it out from, how much did we sell in Cass County? And then that's available right there at a click, instead of us having to open up every individual Excel spreadsheet, filtering it out, doing how many extra steps. It's just literally a click of a filter and it's there.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, it's, like you said, it's pretty slick. Like, once you connect the data source to it, if you add, yesterday's sales to it or whatever it is, we can schedule that to refresh however often we need. If it's once a day, week, several times during a day, whatever is appropriate for the data source, to where you come in maybe the next morning and see, like, where are we at this week or where are we at this month? And you'll have that ready for you right away. So yeah, you're not digging through Excel files, you're not looking at separate Excel files, not doing lookups. We can do all that within Power BI.
In fact, you already kind of built something like that for us with sales history. You can drill down to the make, model, serial number, salesman, customer.
Melissa, are you able to go back a couple slides? Keep going. One more. Oh, one more. So, for example, to touch on like what she was talking about, up on the very top up there, those are filters that we ask for Razor to implement into our Power BI so that we can either see it by location, or maybe we want it specific by technician, or maybe we want to know by our branch, but we want a specific county and everything that's in. So those are filters that we were able to have added in there. And those filters aren't all just coming from one platform. Some might be coming from that Excel spreadsheet. Some might be coming from our business system. And that's what's really nice about this, is so that you don't have to go and open up a whole bunch of them and try to grab data from here and there. It's all into here. And then whatever data or information you're trying to get out of it, or what you would need to drill down to even further, that's where Power BI is very powerful.
We did have we didn't bring it up, but on the work in process report, you can right click and then hit drill through, and then it basically brings you to another screen. It'll show you like everything that's on the work order. So it allowed us not to have to go back into our ERP system and look to see exactly what labor dates were on there, what parts and stuff like that. So
I don't want to overdo it here, but one of the other perceptions that I had along the way is I jumped in the first phone call, made the introductions, Andy gained access, started sorting, evaluating what's present in the existing transition from previous developer to new. Chris said we'd like to do this. Brandy said we'd like to do that. And literally the next Thursday morning at 9 o'clock, Andy had already started making change and progress the light went on. Brandy and Chris are like, we have a horsepower here, let's get going. So I guess from my perspective, back to my analogy of selling you a firewall, we're 2 weeks from getting it in, 2 weeks to deploy it. Within 2 weeks, we were already making substantial changes and building a platform for growth. So the pace of the project, to me, has been fun to watch it happen on the sideline. And yes, I join. They always cringe when I do because I talk too much. But long story short, right, the pace at which we got started to breakneck to where we are today, I think is second to none in terms of like solutions that we've seen in the past.
And a lot of that's actually due to where Chris and Brandy had it prior. I told them yesterday, I was like, I feel like it's almost like we've done a lot of work, but like I got to start up here. Whereas, sometimes you start here and it's great to see that journey no matter where you start. One thing that we found works really well, and we touched on it, is meeting weekly. Like, you don't want to send us away for 2 or 3 months and like come back with reports, because I'll find a different road than what you want me to go down to at some point here. So it's good to have that weekly touch point where you say like, okay, yep, this is like 90% there. Can you also do this? And then maybe not, maybe that's too much.
That's exactly what happened to me, and that's why I found you guys, was because they brought in a new person, and then he came back to me like a month later with reports that weren't what we asked for, and we already had them. So then, yeah, I'm like, well, I want to move on from this. So.
Six minutes left. Any other questions? Kara, they can crush it if you choose to. Even if it's a introductory phone call to say, hey, this is what we're doing, how do we do this? Piece of cake. Any other questions? If not, we'll wrap. Very well done. Channel partner, Razor, if you have points of engagement that you want to do, work through your rep at Network Center. And I was serious about it. If anybody needs a forklift, you can't be in the better situation with Toyota and FM Forklift. With that, it's a wrap, right? Good job, everyone. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Rob.